kids need to be fulfilled in whatever they choose that they want to do in life. At the end of the day, we can't make those choices for young people, but we have to do everything that we can to set up young people to be able to make those choices for themselves. And so when there is the tension of a school is beloved in a community, but it is the young people who are there are not receiving a high quality education, what do we do with that school?
Today's guest is Darryl Cobb, the president of Charter School Growth Fund, where he has been responsible for overseeing investment across a network of over 100 charter schools. In 2013, he founded the Emerging CMO Fund to support charter school leaders of color. Prior to the Charter School Growth Fund, Darryl was the Chief Learning Officer at the KIPP Foundation. And now, here are your hosts, Mildred Otero and Taylor Stewart.
Hello, and welcome to the Leaders Table. We're not here to talk about titles or CVs, but to explore the moments that have shaped a leader. It's those moments, raw and real experiences, that don't always make it into the spotlight. I'm Mildred Otero, president of Lee.
And I'm Taylor Stewart, vice president of platforms at Lee. Mildred, it is so great to do this series with you.
It is so exciting. I'm so happy to be here with you. Today, we're sitting with Darryl Cobb, the president of Charter School Growth Fund, who has been on an amazing leadership journey. I've known him for years. So excited for this conversation. Thanks for being here, Darryl.
I'm so thrilled to be here with both of you. Let's go.
All right, then let's go and begin at the beginning. Can you tell us about where you come from? What's the place or experience that you feel has really shaped you?
Where I come from. It's an easy question, and I think sometimes a hard question at the same time. I had a bit of a unique experience. I grew up in the northern suburbs of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a small suburb called Cranberry, which if you were to go there now, it's a bustling suburb. But when I was there, it was borderline country. My high school was in a old cow kind of pasture, was where my high school was. And it was great growing up there. But probably the thing that was most unique for me is there were not a lot of other students who looked like me and who looked like my brother. I was the only Black student in a class of about 380 kids, and that was all the way K through high school. My parents had moved to the suburbs and thought that there would be other people of color who would move there, and it just didn't work out that way. So I had a very, very unique experience of living in a world where I was oftentimes the only one in the room. And I think part of the reason that that has shaped a leadership experience for me is I know when you're the only one in a room, you will feel kind of a certain way about that. But that was my lived experience for the first 18 years of my life. And so I think I'm comfortable in places where others may not be. I had to develop a bunch of coping mechanisms and realities about my own abilities and my own right to be in every room that I was in. And so I think a lot of that experience has shaped the leader that I am today.
Thank you.
I know thank you for that, Darryl. Who's been one of the most important influences in your life, and what key lessons have they passed on to you?
There's so many, and I know that we only have a little bit of time for this podcast today, but a couple that I will share. For me, it always starts with my parents. There was a model of incredibly high expectations for my brother and I, and also a model of fighting. I think I was in second grade, maybe, and you had to take an IQ test to get into the purpose program. And my mother was like, my baby is gifted and you're going to put him in a program. We don't need a test. And after lots of back and forth, they ultimately did not put me in the program, but they kind of created another classroom where kids got access to all the same curricula and all the same things without doing that, right? And so that fighting spirit, but also that spirit that focused very much on education is the thing. There was an expectation of doing well in the classroom. A's, maybe B's were allowed in our house. There was no doubt that you were going to college. There was no doubt that you were going to have tutors to make sure that you got done what you needed to get done in your classes. there was no doubt you were going to do some academic work over the course of the summertime. All of those things were opportunities that my parents expected me to take advantage of. So I think that model of high expectations still rolls with me today. And I think in my education journey, one of the biggest influences is somebody, Mildred, I know you know well, Dr. Howard Fuller,
Oh, yeah.
a longtime superintendent in Milwaukee, but that doesn't even begin to talk about the way in which he fights
Influenced.
for
Yeah.
freedom of
Mhm.
young people through education. And he has deeply influenced me from when I first made the move from corporate America to education. Dr. Fuller's words, his fight, his spirit have always lived inside of me. And he's somebody that I still to this day very much look up to and want to have just a
Mm.
fraction of the impact that he has had on so many
Mhm.
people in this world. If I could do that, I'd be very successful.
Yeah, your stories of place and people make a lot of sense in how you ended up where you are today. So I'd actually like you to surprise us. What's something surprising that people don't know about you?
I'll go with something that some people know about me, but many don't. I was a nerd growing up. I am a nerd. I'm proud. I was an electrical engineering major. I was a math kid, but my one of my first loves is Star Wars.
Oh.
When the first movie came out, I think I made my parents take me 6 or 7 times. They kept giving me more chores to do so that before I could go back and see it again. But, dressing up as a kid in all of the Star Wars costumes, then, it kind of went dormant for a little while. And then as the franchise was reinvigorated, it is now something I share deeply with both of my children and in my house. And when events like C2E2, which is the kind of Midwest version of Comic-Con happen, you'll find me there in a Jedi robe with a lightsaber with my kids, fully decked out. So yeah, anybody who wants to talk Star Wars, I'm down for everything about the galaxy, New Republic, Old Republic. Let's go. I'm ready.
I love that. That's good. That's good to know, Darryl. Along those lines, outside of work, what are parts of yourself that you think make you the leader that you are? Sometimes it's not always the job title, but the things we carry with us.
So much of my time outside of work is in my primary role as father or my role as husband. Family is
Mm-hmm.
so important to me. And as much as I love the work that I do and feel successful in the work that I've done over the course of my career, at the end of the day, it is truly all about family.
Mm.
I have a son who's in college and a daughter who is a junior in high school and starting to think about college. And so finding ways to spend time with them and to just watch them grow and watch them flourish and wish that I was in my age today, half as curious and half as smart as they are. That's really what moves me. And in general, I think I love seeing young people. I love the spirit of young people. I love the energy of young people, especially as they're going through and discovering who they are and who they want to be and what their place is in this world. So for me, outside of work, it is really all about family.
I totally can relate to that, Darryl. As you think about that kind of space of family, and it might just be the extension, I'd love to hear who's someone that's really stuck with you along the way, the hard parts of the journey, and what's one lesson from them that you keep returning to?
Yeah. There are so many people who have stuck with me, but I think I'm going to actually give you two examples. When I finished undergrad, I started in corporate America and I was at Accenture. One of the first bosses that I had, when you come in with a big kind of analyst class, and they rate that analyst class on, I think it was a 5 point scale, and, kind of are you 1 to 5, and they rate the whole class, and it's a forced curve. So there's only so many spots for somebody to be a 5 and somebody to be a 4, and kind of everybody's competing, and it's, who can get 5s and who can get to the promotion early, and it's this kind of big thing. He sat me down and he said, "You can focus on that if you want. But what I'm going to ask you when you come in here every time for your review and to see how you're doing is, Are you the undeniable best at your current job?
Mm.
Mm.
And if you can answer that question honestly, yes, then you're going to be successful. So lots of people had dreams about, oh, when I get the next job, when I get to be a manager, when I get to be the thing. And he was like, just focus on being the undeniable best at your current job.
Mm.
And that's the thing that's going to help propel you to the next one. That's something that I've carried with me ever since that conversation. And I often share with young people today. They ask about career progression and how did I achieve things that I've achieved. And it is literally every day working to be the best version of the job that I currently have. And that has led to many opportunities to get other jobs. But the focus is there, today, how can I be the best president at the Charter School Growth Fund? I'd say a second thing that has stuck with me throughout my career in education were some early days when I started in education at the KIPP Foundation many, many, many years ago. I had the pleasure of meeting Harriet Ball. And Harriet was an excellent educator who had this unique way of teaching young teachers how to bring joy into the classroom, but how to be demanding of students at the same time. And I think the lessons of learning from her were spread through the founders of KIPP and through many of the schools and through many of the schools that I have the fortunate ability to go to today. Many of those were a part of what kind of Harriet has spawned, even if people didn't know her in the way that she taught in classrooms. So just a great joy of always hearing her when I walk into classrooms. And are the teachers, do they have the respect of the children? Are they demanding a lot of the children? But are the children happy to be learning in those classrooms?
That is a very good just observation and reflection, Darryl. We appreciate it. I'm going to take a step back a little bit. One of the things that we like to ask leaders who have been sort of established in their journey, like yourself, failure is a tough teacher. Can you share a time where failure really shaped you, something that you might not have learned any other way?
Failure is the best teacher, both fortunately and unfortunately. And I think all of us, when you really look at it, if you're not able to realize those lessons from failure, then, you're kind of doomed to make the same mistakes over and over again. I have a phrase that I use sometimes with my team is, how can we make new mistakes? Because that's where we learn. But when we make the same old mistakes, right, that's us not learning from those and moving forward. I think there's been lots of times when I've failed in my career, but I think probably the one that had the most impact on me was when I had a chance to lead a charter school on the west side of Chicago. One of the first schools that was ever chartered in Chicago. I came in and we had a leadership team, and it was really a mission to keep the good things going that the school had, but return it to some of the glory and become one of the shining lights in one of the best schools in the city.
Mm-hmm.
The team was there, everybody was in there, everybody was working hard. But when we took a good, hard look around, recognized that the education that we were providing to the young people was not meeting the needs of what they deserve to get on a day in and day out basis. And ultimately, the school closed, and I had to look at the students, the parents, the staff, and acknowledge that we had not done enough to create a school where young people should be both proud of the school, but where the school is helping young people learn at the levels that are necessary for them to have futures where they can thrive. We made the tough decision to close down the school and spent a bunch of time trying to work with students and families to help them get into the higher performing schools who were delivering for students. A lot of outpouring from those other schools and a lot of acceptance from those other schools to help our students get there. But that still, I think, almost every morning when I wake up and look in the mirror, there's a piece of me that is still feeling the lack of success that we ultimately had for the young people. And recognizing that I now have the opportunity to be investor in networks of schools that are doing great things for kids and that are doing that. And so I never ever want to take for granted how hard that work is, because I know that in doing it, I was not successful in doing that. But the people that I have the opportunity to invest in, they are fundamentally changing the lives of young people and helping them become the young adults that they want to be, or the elementary students that they want to be, in addition to providing the knowledge and skills that are necessary to help them get there. We could talk for the rest of this
Right. It's
podcast
hard
about the
lessons.
scars,
Absolutely.
the scars from that, and the leadership mistakes that I made, and the decisions that I made that I would make again. That experience has taught me more than all the successes that I've had in my career.
That is such a powerful story. And I appreciate your openness to really share that space of failure. It gets easy to gloss over the thing that went wrong and just get to the end lesson. So I appreciate you walking us through that whole journey.
That's where we learn,
Yeah.
right? That's where the greatest learning for me has
Absolutely.
come from. That moment and other moments where I've not been successful, and you get to go back and interrogate and then bring that into your leadership going forward.
And I love the lessons for your staff, Darryl, around making new mistakes. Because so many people are afraid of making mistakes, and failure is, just part of it. But really, the lessons that come from it is part of leadership as well.
If there is no failure happening, especially given the populations of students that I have the privilege of working with schools who serve those students every day, if we are not pushing the boundary, we know that by and large, low-income students and students of color are not seeing achievement at the levels that we all want for them and that they want for themselves and that their communities want for them today. So if we are not pushing the boundaries for them, we are not doing enough. There are things that we know that work. We need to do more and more and more of those. And in areas where things aren't working, we need to push the boundaries to help our young people get to the levels where they can be sitting in the podcast studio with you all once they get into their careers. That's what we should want for all of them.
Absolutely. Your language of pushing the boundaries makes me think about learning edges. So, Darryl, I'd love to hear from you. What are you learning right now? What's a new thing, either in your leadership or for yourself, that you are learning?
I'll share two things. One is pushing me on the edge, and the other is just a mixture of some super fun stuff. Illinois and Chicago have become a leading hub for quantum computing, which is kind of beyond AI. It's the next version of computing and solving problems that today's computers can't solve. So I'm trying to get smart on quantum computing. I am early
Okay.
in my knowledge, but I just think it is the next frontier. And so I want to learn about it. The other thing is, I mentioned we are Star Wars fans. My daughter and I recently watched one of the series that's kind of focused on the buildup of the Resistance and the Rebel Alliance in Star Wars. It was a really well done series. It's called Andor for those who know
I
it.
loved that.
Yeah.
About the kind of slow build of the Resistance. My daughter and I got in a fascinating conversation about the fact that neither of us know much about the slow build of the Underground Railroad. And so we know the stories of Harriet Tubman. We know the stories of the abolitionists. We know the stories of the quilts and the songs and the things and how it worked. But we realize we don't know much about the architecture of the Underground Railroad and how that was created, how that was sustained, who knew what and introduced what to other people. And so my daughter and I are trying to go on a journey to learn more about the architecture of the Underground Railroad and how it worked, all inspired by Star Wars.
Wow.
That's amazing.
That's amazing. Absolutely. Darryl, I'm going to shift a little bit, not much, but one of the things we love to ask leaders Oftentimes, when you have reached a certain level of leadership, you might find yourself in a moment where your values are in conflict. Have you ever been pulled in different directions by your own values? And how did you navigate that moment and that tension?
It's a great question. And I'll maybe harken back to a slightly different version of my failure story.
Mm,
But one of the things I believe deeply in is the power of community and the power of schools to play an essential role in the building of community. And at the same time, I deeply believe that all schools should be providing students an education at an incredibly high level. So there becomes this intersection of what to do when a school is deeply rooted in a community, but the school is not providing the level of
right.
education,
Mhm.
right, that the kids need to be fulfilled in whatever they choose that they want to do in life. At the end of the day, we can't make those choices for young people, but we have to do everything that we can to set up young people to be able to make those choices for themselves. And so when there is the tension of a school is beloved in a community, but it is the young people who are there are not receiving a high quality education, what do we do with that school?
Mm,
And so I
Mhm.
think I've been involved in a number of conversations over the course of my career that revolve around, is it a school turnaround? Is it a new leader who comes in? Is it a closure of the school? And in every one of those, there's a deep tension for our young people, by and large, only get 1 year at any given grade.
Mhm.
And so if it's going to take
mm,
us a long time to move something, how many young people are then not going to get the best for that year that they have? It is a deep tension for me, the questions around school closures and should you ever close a school. I would love to say, no, you should never close a school. They're the linchpins of communities. And I would also love to say every child in every school is getting a great education.
Mhm.
And if they're not getting a great education, as much as we may love an institution or a building or what it's doing for a community or a principal or a teacher, if children are not being educated at a high level that allows them to have options for their futures, then we as adults should not be fighting for that school to continue to exist in the way that it currently exists that is not serving students well. I think it's a tension that is hard in public education. I
absolutely.
think it
Mhm.
is a tension that is hard in charters, it's hard in traditional education. But at the end of the day, we have to be on the side of whatever is going to provide the best education for young people. That's what we owe them.
Yeah.
Mm. I want to dig in on this point even more from you just gave the what of your values that really drive that really tough decision making. And then I'd love to go into the how you make decisions. So, when you are making a really tough decision, especially those that affect other people, how do you do it? And do you have a process or a ritual that you come back to in your tough decision making regularly?
As a person of faith, I would say the thing that is most important and most consistent is prayer.
Mm.
When I'm making tough decisions, like
Mm,
I try to center there, but I'm also an engineer. So when I'm making tough decisions, there's the T chart of the pluses and the minuses and who is this going to affect? How are they going to be affected? I think oftentimes in making tough decisions, one of the hardest leadership lessons is not everybody is going to be happy if you're truly making a tough decision. If
Mhm.
everybody is happy, then the decision truly wasn't that tough.
mm,
Mhm.
And so understanding who are the people that are not going to be happy with your decision, ensuring that there is strong communication in the process, ensuring that you're hearing and getting information from as close to the source as possible. I think sometimes as leaders, you don't, you're not on the ground, so you don't hear everything. And so I think it's important to try to get as much information as you can before making that decision. The standard for me is, what is going to be in the best interest of the young people especially when we're talking about those decisions in light of education. And are young people, as a result of this decision, going to be able to better prepare themselves for the future that they want, whatever that future may be? That's got to be central. It's the consideration of the young people. It's the T-chart of the pluses and minuses from my engineering. And then it's the prayerful part of me that all come together when I have to make a tough decision.
Wow. Thank you for that, Darryl. And, leadership isn't always easy. So just curious, what are the moments and things that are bringing you joy, both in your work, in life? Leadership is tough. What are the moments that are bringing you joy?
Yeah, I feel like I don't struggle for joy.
Oh,
I feel
good.
like right now there are always 100 reasons why joy should not exist. I think that you've got to find both the micro and the macro moments of joy. We love laughter in our house. My kids are a constant source of laughter, right? And so seeing that, experiencing that with them brings me joy. But I think from a professional aspect, I wake up in the morning and I am thankful that I get to do the job that I get to do every day. I get to go out and help organizations that want to serve more students. Oftentimes, that's more students who look like me, who are students of color, to be able to be in a position where they have an education that provides them access to do whatever it is that they want to do. I'm blessed to be in a role like that. And so the thing that brings me joy is when I get out and get to see schools where that's happening, whether I'm in New York at Excellence Charter Schools, or I'm at Resurgence Hall outside of Atlanta, or I'm at the Academy Charter Schools on Long Island, or like I could go all around the country with places where I walk into schools and I see so much joy accompanied by rich and deep learning that's happening for students. And when those two things happen, that's just magical. And unfortunately, it doesn't happen for enough of our students on a day in and day out basis. And so my job is to figure out how can we help that to happen for more students every day so that they can walk away and live the inspired life that is of their choosing. So you can probably hear it in my voice. I have joy every day in the work that I do. I have joy in the family that I am blessed to have. I have joy when the next Star Wars series comes out. I have joy in learning about quantum computing. So I do think while there are many, many things, and I live in the city of Chicago where there's a lot going on right now, and you can choose to focus on that, and we absolutely should focus on those things that are happening and impacting so many of the students who are served in the schools that we're fortunate enough to be able to support. We should focus on those things. We should focus on ensuring that students and their families have not only the education, but the basic services that they need to survive and to thrive, frankly, not just survive, but to thrive. And we can't be so focused that we lose our joy. So I try to keep a balance of both.
Absolutely.
We definitely can hear that joy in your voice as you are saying that answer. And I would love you to kind of think to 23-year-old Darryl. Maybe he had that same joy at that moment in time. Maybe not. What advice would you give to your 23-year-old self?
Get more sleep, keep working out. You kind of stopped all of that late in your 20s and into your 30s, and you're paying for it now in your 50s. Eat better, all of those things that I try to tell my children now. They are both fortunately athletes, and my wife and I are both like, please just don't stop. You don't have to be a professional at it, but your 50-year-old self will thank you if you just keep at it and keep doing it. I made a big mistake there. But I think professionally, I would tell 23-year-old Darryl was very focused on what's the linear path to having the next job. As I mentioned before, I was in corporate America, I was in management consulting, and I was very focused on that linear path. I think it was when I opened myself to this idea that wow, maybe public education is where I want to go. Maybe being part of the charter school movement is where I want to go. But I have no idea what that path is going to look like. That has been the most rewarding part of my career because I have just come through a wide variety of opportunities, met a number of people who've taken, right, they've taken risks on me, they've showed their belief in me. I hope I've returned that by delivering for them and helping leaders across the country to have resources that they need to lead schools for more and more children and to help train more and more teachers. So I would tell 23-year-old Darryl, don't be so set. I know you were an engineer. I know you just graduated, but don't be so set on everything being a formula. There's some art in this, and you just got to allow yourself to be open to that art over the course of your career and your life.
I love that. Something along those lines, Darryl, not necessarily to your 23-year-old self, but in general, there's so many of our members that are at different parts in their career, some of them early in their career. And I'm just curious if there's a habit or a tool or even a mindset that you swear by these days.
One of the things that I have found over the course of my career, and I didn't have this early on, but I think I have developed it that has been positive in my career trajectory, is trying to have the mindset of what I call expanding the pie. So I think so often we think about things in a fixed pie mentality, and it's about how do I get, my slice of the pie or my organization's slice of the pie. And that leads to a very much a zero sum mentality. When I reflect back on the times of my career where I've seen success is where I've been able to say, hey, that is the pie as it is now. What happens if we expand the pie? And then what happens if the work that we're doing just gets a bigger share of the expanded pie? And that's how we grow. And so having that mindset is something that has, for me, been an integral part of many of the successes that I've had over my career, is asking, how do we grow the pie? And then whatever our slice is, right, can we grow it exponentially in that growth portion of the pie? But when I've gone in and had fixed pie mentalities and I look back, that's where I realize I've not been as successful over the course of my career.
Darryl, this has been an amazing conversation. And we are here at a final question, and it is fittingly about legacy. So I'd love to know from you, what do you hope people will remember about your leadership?
That's a really good question. And I'm not one who thinks about legacy. Actually, legacy kind of makes me nervous. Like I don't want to talk
I'm too
about
young to be
legacy.
talking about
in
legacy.
part- about legacy, yeah. But I think part of it is like there's a little bit of, it feels like there's a little bit of self-centeredness in the idea of thinking about legacy that makes me uncomfortable. But I think like what I would love is that for the people that I've had a chance to be on teams with and to lead, that they are better because of the time that we've spent together. For the leaders who had a vision for a school that was going to do incredible things for kids, that their schools are better because I was able to help them obtain the resources necessary to do that. And ultimately, for the kids who are in many of those schools, hundreds of thousands, hopefully millions of kids that I will never meet, that they got to go to a place that poured into them, that allowed them to grow up and be whatever it is that they want to do, whatever the change is that they want to make on this earth, whatever the contributions are they want to make. I would love my legacy to be that I helped those institutions provide those opportunities. And then I think the biggest part of any legacy, anytime I think about legacy, is was I a good father who helped my children become the best versions of themselves. And I've definitely messed up there. But largely, have I helped my children become the best versions of themselves? Have I helped our family become the best version of ourselves? Have I been a great husband for my wife? And so all of those things are, I think, how I ultimately want to think about legacy.
Thank you, Darryl. I so appreciate your honest and open sharing of stories. I know it resonated for me, and it's going to resonate deeply to everyone listening.
It really is. It's these types of conversations that remind us all that leadership is complex and it's imperfect and it's human. To everyone tuning in, thank you for spending this time with us. Remember, leadership is as much about the questions as the answers. Take care until next time.
Thank you for listening to The Leaders Table. Please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. And for more information about Lee, you can visit us online at wearelee.org.